Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and today we have a first time guest making official debut here on the channel. My guest today is an author specializing in sci fi romance fantasy where she's also a 9 to 5 working mom with two beautiful kids and a very supportive husband who, according to her words, still hasn't read her book because he's waiting for the final results. Her debut novel is The Galaxy's Eyes, the beginning of a master plan that signed his fate. The book follows the main lead, Armaan Malhorta, when Armaan overcomes impossible challenges to earn a place in a hidden world, he believes he's finally found his new home. As he struggles with revelations about his family, the love of his life, Sanjana Singhania, I probably butchered that, I apologize, its abilities and his cosmic powers, he discovers that every step his life has been planned by the one person he trusted the most. From the chaotic end of a fierce battle to the heartbreaking discovery of family secrets, Armand's journey has only just begun as he uncovers hidden truths about a mysterious past and battles that the formidable Sharif Armaan is forced to confront his inner demons and the heavy responsibilities thrust upon him. With his galaxy eyes, a manifestation of his most profound powers, he must navigate a web of deceit, power struggles, and personal sacrifices in a world where every decision could mean the difference between salvation and destruction. He must summon all his courage and determination to protect those he loves and prevent a global catastrophe. And as he races against time, the line between hero and villain blurs ever so dangerously. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, author Suman Soechit. Suman, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Awesome. So, before we dive into your book, is there anything else you would like to share to our viewers and listeners? Anything more about your background in writing? Any other fun facts?
Well, basically, I've never actually dreamt of being an author or never wanted to be an author, actually. So this came as a surprise. So I hope people will like it, and I hope they will read the first one, and from there we see what happens in the future.
Awesome. Now, I know I explained the entire synopsis of Galaxy Eyes. Was there anything else that I did not mention that you would like to share with the viewers? Is this a part of a potential series? Is this a pre-order? Is it coming out next year?
No, it's a series. So it's the first book of the series called The Soul of the Galaxy. It is already live for pre-order, the Kindle version. The paperbacks will be the whole book will be released on December 12th. So
Oh,
yeah, 6 days now from now. And then the paperback will be live. And for now, the pre-orders for the Kindle version are already live. So yeah, I'm excited. This is the first book, so my debut book, really. And I'm excited for people to read it and know their opinions or the reviews about the book.
awesome. Well, this is perfect. I mean, we're right in the holiday season, so everyone's looking for new reads, and yours is in the perfect time for new holiday books for the season. And I know I'm looking for new reads as well, even though I should probably donate some of the books I've already read because I have no space in my room for new books, but that's another thing altogether. So before we dive into Galaxy Eyes, Suman, let's talk a little bit more about you. So, would you say growing up you were always a creative person, or did that come about later in life?
No, actually, I've always been a creative person. I've always liked drawing, painting. As a young child, my parents always told me that I was always busy doing something creative, and they always were like, "Okay, do whatever you want to do." But the bigger stuff came later. So as a young child, most of the time I went to school, so that was a priority. And then after that, it was when I grew up and when I got married. The bigger stuff actually happened. I had a small business for a while, and then after that, it was just about a year ago that I like decided to write a book.
Oh, okay.
I had a story in my mind for a few years now, and I like fantasizing about stories. And I'm a very big Bollywood freak. That's like the Indian version of
Nice.
Hollywood. And so I like stories. I like the love stories, and I always, think about or fantasize stories. So I had a story in my mind for a while, and suddenly one day I was just like, let's put it on paper. Let's write something, or not paper, basically. So I took my phone, I took my notebook, and I started typing. And from there, it went further and further. So I never talked to anyone about it. So I have a cousin of mine, and I'm very close to him, and we always talked. And and one day I said, like, "Hey, I need to tell you something, but don't laugh at me." And he was like,
Okay.
"Okay." He was like, "Tell me." And I was like, "I want to write a book." And he was like, "Okay, what is it?" So whatever I had typed on my note, I sent him, and he was like, "This is it. You have to go further from here. You have to write more. You have to finish this." And that actually motivated me. Like, he was the first person to know and the first person I told, and that motivated me. And from there on, yeah, I was always a reader. So I read like probably 100 books, and I like more than 100,000 books. As a young child, I was always intrigued by stories, and I guess this just came on my path. I think from one day to another, I started writing a book. Yeah.
All right, nice. And you kind of already answered the second one, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So, would you say that at that moment, that was your aha moment when you wanted to write a book, not just as a hobby, but something that could be a possible profession and career down the road?
Yeah, actually, yeah. From the moment my cousin said, like, go on and just do it, uh, you know, uh, I was like, okay, let me at least write it, and we'll see from there what happens to it. And that was exactly the same point where I discovered like Amazon KDP, that
Mm-hmm.
self-publishing stuff, because I was like worried about publish houses, traditional stuff. And when I discovered self-publishing, and I was like, okay, that's at least an option I have, because of course you have to have money for several things, and it's not just an easy road like write and put it on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So from there on, I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, this is yeah, I think this is what I want. This is what I want to do now.
Awesome. That I know the exact same feeling. When I actually published my first book on Barnes and Noble, I was like, "Oh wow, I'm actually going to do this." And it's such an amazing feeling actually seeing one's work physically as opposed to, it's just an idea in our head or
Yeah,
a document on our computer. To physically hold it is quite a milestone, and that
definitely.
actually now kind of leads into the next set of questions, which is the creation and formation of galaxy eyes. So let's start with the first question. So, when you decided to make the decision that you're going to write this book and publish it and share it with readers that you believe would be interested in the story, what were the goals you had setting out with this book, as well as your goals and promises to your future readers who would love fantasy, sci-fi, romance?
Well, my first goal with the whole book was, first of all, to actually put whatever I had in my mind on paper. Uh, I've been a reader since I've been a little girl, and I've never seen a book which had like more of a Bollywood vibe, like an Indian
Right.
Bollywood vibe. I mean, there are a lot of Indian authors, but not this kind of. So I
Hmm.
was like, as a young girl who loved Bollywood and still loves, I was like, why not write a book about it? Why not a story created around the same world of the glitter and the glamour and stuff around that? And I've always been a Marvel kind of fan, so I combined it with superheroes, Marvel, and my goal actually to do that was to put out something that is not created yet. And
Right.
wanted to create something that hasn't been done yet. And to catch the readers that also are into sci-fi, Marvel kind of superhero
Mm,
kind of stuff, romance, of course, because that's the main plot, and
right.
combined everything with it because we know a lot of Hollywood, and I
Hmm.
mean a lot of the world also knows a lot of Bollywood, but it's not a main thing. It's not something everybody talks about it constantly.
Right.
So that was kind of the goal for me to put it out in the world and let's see what happens.
Absolutely. And just a little tangent on this. Like I would say maybe a few years ago I started watching Bollywood films, and honestly, I absolutely love the Bollywood actors and actresses. I love the storytelling. I love the world building. I was actually watching a documentary
Yeah.
that was talking about, what was it? First Love or Love Leads. It was all about Bollywood actors and actresses who were the romantic leads in their respective movies, and talked about how all Bollywood films, they follow a similar formula. There's a lot of singing and dancing.
Yeah.
There's a romantic plot throughout all the story, and there's a lot of action. And I kid you not, viewers and listeners, no matter what Bollywood movie you watch, there will always be those three. It is like the one thing that is constant, and I absolutely love it. And I'm wondering, are readers going to, let me just ask this outright, is there at least like a section where there's something like singing or a song in Galaxy Eyes? I just gotta ask that.
No. No.
Ah, darn.
Like, okay, I have a playlist, of course, and it's like the back
Ooh.
as a background sound music more.
Oh, okay.
Um, but the main male character in this book is a singer. He can sing.
Oh,
He
okay,
can play
that works. That
music,
works.
he can sing, but it's not in this book. Cause yeah, the only thing that you can write in a book about a singing or dancing part is like they were singing and dancing. I mean, I cannot write a whole lyric or a
Right.
whole
That
song.
would be kind of a challenge.
Yeah, that would be a challenge, definitely. But no, he has he can sing. He can not dance. He can dance, but it's not told in this book. Um, and the second one will have probably the next one. There will be a part where I will say that he sings or there's a song or dancing or stuff, but not in this one. Not yet.
All right, that's fair. That is fair. So, okay, so now we're gonna fast forward ahead into the book's creation. So, once you finish writing the first draft and began editing it, I can imagine, you had to have like a spreadsheet of like, okay, who's gonna be the editor, who's gonna be the cover artist, how big the book's going to be, and all that stuff, because that's all a lot of planning and a lot of finance, especially for independent authors. And I was wondering, at that point, did you feel like you were a little overwhelmed?
Yes and no. I mean, I have the money to invest, but it's like I wasn't overwhelmed. It was more that how good can I trust people?
Mm,
Because it's
very
in
true.
stuff, yes, in stuff like this, self-publishing is a journey where you have to do everything by yourself. And from the moment you start hiring people as an editor or a cover designer or whatever, uh, you have to trust people to do that for you. And of course, like by talking, you have to like their work. And that was something that was where I was like a little bit held back from, okay, who can I trust? Which one should I choose? Of course, money talked, like, hey,
Yes.
choose. But yeah, that was more kind of my issue. But at the end of like researching the whole journey of self-published author, I was actually more challenged by the marketing stuff, the how to promote and market
Yes.
yourself, because that's a very big challenge. It's not always
Yes.
that great. So
No, it is not. And we're actually going to be touch on the marketing side and business side in the next set of questions of the interview. Before we get to that, let's actually still continue on this path of the book's creation. So, okay. So after you've gotten the cover artist, you've gotten the editor, it's now the perfect place. The book is exactly the way you want it to be. And you just click that publish button on your computer and it's now out there. Or I should say, it's now up there for pre order. And I imagine you probably made a few copies to give to friends and family to read in advance before it officially goes live. So I know you said your cousin was really excited about this story, but what about other family members or friends who
yes.
read the story? What was their reaction like?
Well, first of except for my cousin, I had my niece actually. She's my cousin brother's daughter, and
Mm,
she's like 21, 22. And she's also a reader, like a diehard reader. And
nice.
she's my alpha reader. She became my alpha reader. So she read everything and she was way beyond excited. And she gave me feedback for everything. I have my mother read my book and she was like, when is the second part coming? I want to know. So I was quite held back with that part too because there are spicy scenes in my book. It's an 18 plus. So I was like,
Okay.
Mom, are you going to read this? But yeah, she did, and she liked it. So yes, some friends of mine, they've also read it, and everyone was excited. Of course, there's something like biased, and maybe they didn't want to
Of
tell
course.
me anything or so. But everyone who read it so far, for my family and friends, they liked it, and they want to know more. So that was for me very motivated to get on with the journey. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's great to hear. So, would you say that their reaction and positive reviews have validated your goals that you set out with this book? And I'm actually going to add on to this because I had another guest talk about something similar to this question, which is when they were writing their book, they wanted not only just create a good story, but they wanted representation in media, in fiction and stories. And to give an example, authors and listeners watching this, the author I'm referring to is author Mandela, who writes African-inspired fantasy stories and African American stories, and he wanted his stories to be true representations of the cultures of Africa. And I'm wondering, Suman, in a way that's also kind of a goal you set out with this book, because I don't think I've ever come across a story like this that is inspired by Bollywood culture, of course, but it may also tie into the various family cultures from the continent of India. So, was that also a goal that you had in mind, even if it wasn't the main goal?
Yeah, yes and no. Kind of. I was not really,
Okay.
yeah, it was a little bit in between. Not really
Mm.
that my first, not, no, it was not really a goal actually. No,
Okay,
no.
that's fair. That's fair. And it is actually pretty cool that a book like this exists, and it's again something that's never been done before, especially tying to like a culture of film, and again, going to Bollywood. And this actually now leads into the next question, which is what I like to call the first reflective question. And Suman, you may have some comments on this, but I think you and I will both agree, like as indie authors, it's an incredible feeling to have one's book out there, but especially in the digital age, it's a little bit of an intimidation factor because, of course, yes, books are now out on the digital world, either an ebook or they can purchase it a lot easier. But because of the internet, there's a lot more chances of are people going to accept this? Are people going to be open minded to it? Because as what I've talked with a lot of authors in every genre, there are these gatekeepers, sort of like who say this is what the genre is supposed to be, even if a book crosses genres. Like you have high epic romance fantasy, uh, dark thriller noir. Any book that's out there now has definitely crossed genre. And for all indie authors and authors in general, there's that little nervousness and intimidation factor of if the book's going to be received, are people going to be open minded to us and be kind? And most importantly, the imposter syndrome in the back of every author's mind is apparent. Now, I know you said earlier in the interview that with the experiences of like family and friends saying very positive things about your book has motivated you to write this, but I'm going to go one step further. What has disciplined you to truly commit to this story and build off of it for potential sequels, even though you may have had moments of imposter syndrome or anxiety as a newly published indie author?
That's actually a very good question. I don't think I have the imposter syndrome.
All
I'm
right.
quite a person, like I'm quite a person. When I say something I want to do, I do it. I first started writing the book, and my concern was more about we'll see later. If I write it, I write it because I wanted to get the story out, the characters out of my head. I wanted to place it on paper and like, okay, what is it? Is it going to be something? Do I like it myself? So that was my first thing I want to do. And after that, and when I started writing or when I wrote the book, I was like, whatever happens, we'll see later. It's not of a concern now. And I'm not, it was not basically like I'm writing it now, so I want to be published. I want to be a published author
Mm.
one day. I have to do this. This is no, that was not one of the things that I was thinking. I was more about thinking, let me just write the book. And because I wanted to do, wanted to write a book, I wanted to finish it. I did actually, and that was not. I'm not a anxiety kind of person. I am very outgoing, social life and everything. A mom, husband, kids, doing stuff. So no, every night I sat down and I started writing the book, but I did not have that part of, like being concerned or overwhelmed with whatever happens in the future. This basically came and I started writing. I was finished. People started reading it, my family, friends.
Hmm.
Like, yes, I like it. I started editing. And from when I started doing that, I did my research. I started my research on Kindle, Amazon, self-publishing, and that was where I was like, okay, a checklist from what do I do? What is my next step? And that was actually yeah, what my journey was, whatever I did writing the book. And it wasn't difficult, actually, not to, exaggerate, but it was not a
Right.
difficult part for me to be on this point right now.
Awesome. And this now actually ties in perfectly to the second half of the interview, which is what I call the business segment, the marketing side of being an author. And so when you've already just now touched on, just now about researching Kindle, doing all the research, and it's like saying, this is the company that I want to publish my book. But let's actually backtrack a bit. So let's go back to where the book is already finished. And now you're researching different platforms, different companies to self publish through. I imagine at that point, there was a lot of research going into it because, especially for indie authors and authors in general, there is a thing which is vanity publishing. And for those who don't know what vanity publishing is when you have a company who says they're going to publish your book, but you have to pay them enormous amounts of money. And ultimately, the book, A, does not get published, or B, it does get published, but it's under the wrong category. I've had a few author friends of mine give their testimonies about that, and it's a very traumatizing experience, not just because financially they put too much money into a company that didn't give them anything, and B, when they found out their book was published in the wrong genre, well, let's just say going back to those gatekeepers, they were ruthless to them. So it's very, very intimidating. Well, not intimidating, but it's a very traumatizing experience, especially for a first-time author. So, Suman, I'm curious, what was your research like when discovering which site and which company was going to be the best one? Was Amazon always the end goal for you to self-publish, or were there other avenues before that?
No, Amazon was actually the first one that I saw. And because I live in the Netherlands, and a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
order from Amazon, also the books and stuff. And I was actually quite, when you live in a country, you look at the behavior of people around you, and when you see
Right.
people ordering stuff from Amazon, also their books, and when I saw it has an option for self-publishing, that was the only goal. The only thing I saw, I was like, okay, Amazon has the option, so I'm going with Amazon. Later on, I discovered other platforms like Ingram Spark and stuff like that, but in my mind, I was like, this is my first time, so no, I'm doing it with Amazon. This is where I'm going, and we'll see whatever happens in the future. So that was my first thing that I was like, no, it's going to be Amazon. Yeah.
Definitely. And another thing to add to that, viewers and listeners, which I found out from a good friend of mine, a fellow author based in Germany, a lot of indie authors are now adding Amazon to their list of places to publish because, as I found out, in the United States, if you're an author and you want to get into the European market,
Mhm.
Amazon is the one to be, not Barnes and Noble, as I found out that Barnes and Noble only ships to the states in the US. So if you want to get the international market, you do have to go through Amazon. But I will add this one last thing. It is a little bit more, not challenging, but there's a lot more extra steps for Amazon. One thing I will say is that ISBNs, you will have to buy your own ISBNs and give them to Amazon. That I found out was like, okay, I need to do that. So definitely my authors and fellow writers, if you want to go into Amazon, definitely do your research, find out exactly what you need. So that way, when you do make the decision, you have everything ready. So now, jumping ahead. So when you finally uh, publish your book and put it for pre-order on Amazon, of course, they always say, what's the genre? What's the target audience? And can you tell us a little bit about that? I know in your bio that you specialize in sci-fi, fantasy, romance. How difficult was it, or not difficult, but how much of a challenge was it to write a book that would satisfy the audiences in those specific genres?
Uh, for me, the biggest challenge was actually to have my story ready in my own head, that I would know what I want to
Okay.
write. Because if that's not something I know about, if I'm like, still have a top parts of a story in my head, it would be difficult for me. But I had the whole story in my head, also on the sci-fi part, because the
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi is like the foundation of the story, but it
Right.
goes on with the fantasy and with the romance. And it's a story that is in a real world, the world where we live in. So it's not a fantasy world, it's actually the real world, but it's a fantasy story. So that's also something that made it quite easier because I did not have to think about creating a new country and
Mm-mm.
pronunciations of words and
Right.
stuff like that. So yeah, that was more the thing. But I had my story ready. I had everything ready where I wanted to start and where I wanted to go. So with the genres of sci-fi, uh, I already thought everything through what I want to write, where the sci-fi comes in, and the romance fantasy is just the story revolved around the main male character, and then of course the main female character. So yeah, that was the biggest challenge for me to actually think through the story
Mm.
first and then start writing it.
Excellent. And when would you say you began considering the audience in mind? Because for us authors, we are the target audience first and foremost. But when we go about publishing our works, again, we have to consider the audience. So for you, Suman, during your process of writing Galaxy Eyes, when did you start to consider your audience or audiences?
uh it's actually quite mixed because what I said, the story has a foundation of sci-fi, so it's not that only for sci-fi readers.
Hmm.
It has a foundation, but it's not like difficult. As we know, sci-fi can be difficult sometimes, so that's
Right.
it's a little bit on the low part, on the foundation, the
Hmm.
beginning of the story, the start of the story, and from there on it's the superhero story, the epics, the
Right.
Avengers, how do you say that, the adventures of it, but also the fantasy of a story that
Hmm.
revolves in a
Okay.
real world. So that was actually, yeah, what I targeted in readers, that they um, can also just read it as a romance fantasy.
Hmm.
It's not a very difficult sci-fi foundation,
Oh,
but
okay, I get
also
it.
with sci-fi readers that also have a romance fantasy story, but with also the part of the sci-fi they like. So it was more like a mixture, everything in one, just
Mm.
throw it, and yeah.
Okay, very nice. And kind of leading on to that, for us authors, we always try to target the audience, but within the audience is the readership. And one thing I've always learned about readership is that you have to be very specific of the readership you are targeting to. I'll give an example, especially in the YA, which is like the biggest readership in the publishing world next to adult readership. There are certain books which are marketed towards um, young adults, but upon reading them, they need another review, and that comes with a lot of trial and error. So I guess you may have already answered this before, but I'm going to try to reword it differently. So in the beginning, you said that your book has a lot of spice to it, 18 plus. But was that the story you had in mind, and that was the type of story you wanted, or did you want to write it sort of like as what people like to call new adult fiction, where it's in the middle, where young adults can read it, but also adult readers enjoy it as well?
Well, that was actually the story. Yeah, I had in mind that the main male character was the romance, and I had the spice in mind, everything. Before I started writing, I didn't know anything about genres or like young adult, new adult. I didn't know anything. I
Okay.
introduced myself as I'm an 18 plus writer with a story that is 18 plus. That's how I referred it. And later on, I discovered what the genres are, and the groups, the ages that comes with it. But no, I had the story ready in mind with spice, with the romance part, and I only want to target the 18 plus people with it.
Mm.
So that's also where I'm going with the whole story.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. And another question I want to ask you, Suman, is probably one of my newfound favorites. And this actually comes from a guest I had earlier this year. Shout out to Eric Bowden for this question. Originally, I had a question during this part of the interview, which was, who were the authors and or books that really helped craft your voice as an author. And I asked this to all of my guests, but when I got to Eric Bowden, he switched it on its head. He said, I can list you all the authors and the books that have helped me, and I am. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to be like any of those authors. I'm
Mm,
trying to be myself. And he makes a pretty good point. He actually gave an example, which is how many times have we gone to a bookstore and we've seen a book that has this tagline, so
mm,
and so meets so and so. Even if you've never read any of those books, you know those books and you know those authors. From a reader's point of view, that's going to entice them to pick up the book. But from a author's point of view, that's not really helpful. And he broke it down and it made perfect sense because as authors, yes, we do want to write in the genre that we're most comfortable in, but we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves in saying that we are only these type of writers or these authors that specialize in this genre. And he's absolutely right. I mean, there have been many authors, some of the greats, who have written other books. It's just that they're most known for the books that got them, famous. And I'm curious, Suman, how have you been able to balance this sort of scale where you do want to show your reverence to the stories of the past on one scale, but at the end of the day, you're showing your individuality and want your readers to know who you are. So that way, when a second book of yours come out, it may not be the second one for this, but an entirely different one. They can pick up your book and say, "Oh, this is Suman's. I know exactly how she writes. I know exactly what to expect."
yes, I never had that I compared to another writer. I never,
Mm,
my writing style is literally only my own writing style. It is probably not the most original ones, or not original, maybe not the most read ones, because I have my original voice. I wrote in my truly original voice, and I have never actually looked at other authors for inspiration for that. I've never looked at other books or writing styles for inspiration. I've never did any of that actually. The day I wanted to write, I have always been a reader, but not a reader that I was concerned about writing styles or
mm,
so. I love a story and I read it, and that's okay. But when I started writing my own book, I've never had the inspiration of other authors or writing styles that came upon me. I was like, this is my original voice, and that is what I actually did. I've never had that. So basically, the person you were talking about was absolutely right,
mhm,
because it is your original thing. You want to write whatever you, and in the same style you want to tell. I don't know whether people have wrote the same style or in the same writing style as me. I don't actually really know. It is, for me, it's original me, and I've also never, the books I've read, I've never seen it uh
right.
in that way. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And you know what? It just add on to that. It is sort of like, it is a struggle for all authors because we're always inspired by, the books we've read growing up. I know for me, I read a lot of Bernard Cornwell,
Mm,
Brian Jacques, Victor Milan, Alan Smale. And my writing is very descriptive, very cinematic. And a lot of people have said, man, you're really good at this stuff. And it's like, yeah. And I try not to be like those authors that I've just mentioned. Also, another author, Valerio Manfredi, another great
mm,
author, Italian historian. But it is a struggle. It is sort of like this dance because you want to show your individuality
yeah.
in the publishing world because it's your individuality that's going to get people's attention. Yes, you can tell them, whenever you do like a book signing or anything, who were the inspirations or little nods or Easter eggs. But at the end of the day, you do not want to imitate, you don't want to replicate. Originally, I used to believe for a long time, the writers were, which we may be to a degree, liars, cheaters, and thieves because we make stuff up, we cheat people out of time, and we steal from one another because the same story it has been told
True.
numerous times. And in that regard, that is true. But I've now moved away from that, and I've now focused on what I like to call the three E's, which I like to call educate, entertain, and enlighten. And if you look at the three E's in like some of the stories, some of them target two of the three, some of them target one of the three, some books target three of the three. And that only comes with, trial and error and really honing your craft. And that leads probably to one of the biggest questions, Suman, that I am very eager to hear your thoughts on. So before we get to that, let me just lay down some context for this to help you with your answer. So up to now, which will now be 6 years, I've been doing podcasting for that long. Initially, it was just audio interviews. No one saw my face. And only recently, 2 years ago, I decided to do YouTube. And it was just a little fun thing. And, it just snowballed into this huge effect. Now, with this, I think, Suman, you will be now guest number 100 and something out of authors. I have interviewed almost now 100 authors out of 246 videos in 2 years. It's crazy. And, from all the authors that I've met, interviewed, whether also in person or at conventions, they've given me so much words of wisdom, so many pearls of thoughts. And I've come to the conclusion that for all authors, hybrid, traditional, indie, there are two roads: to be an author and to be known as an author. To
Mm.
be an author is an individual dedicated to storytelling, not motivated by capital, but it's nice to get a little money here and there. To be known as an author is an individual dedicated to marketing, going on shows like this, uh, publishing their works on every social media platform, getting the word out, being a hustler, so to speak. And each path has its own trials and obstacles. But I definitely feel for first time authors getting into this industry, it is enticing to go down the second path because we all want to be known as authors. But that leads to a lot of unrealistic goals and expectations, especially if you're chasing trends, trying to get the market, trying to write a book or publish a book that's right at the height of either a popular movie or something like that. And, your readers are going to pick it up and your writing is going to suffer. And ultimately, your passion for writing is going to die because it's no longer fun to write because
Mm.
it's now a job. Not to say that writing already isn't a job, but the mentality shifts. And I've come to this very important conclusion. In the publishing industry, there is no guarantee that your first book is going to guarantee your stardom status as an author. I do want to say, though, there are exceptions. I have met authors whose first book did give them stardom status. That's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of work and a lot of trial and error. But generally speaking, you have this roller coaster of highs and lows for first time authors. And it could be deflating when the goals that you set out were not met. But those have to be realistic.
Yeah.
And big thing in that is that if you think it's just a get rich quick scheme, no, it's not. There is no guarantee in the publishing industry that your book is going to sell
No.
hundreds of copies, all of that. That takes a lot of time, a lot of grinding and hustling. So, Suman, I now turn to you and would like to hear your thoughts on this discussion that, yes, in the publishing industry, there is no guarantee your first book is going to give you everything you want, but that shouldn't be seen as a negative and instead be seen as just you're just getting your foot through the door.
No, I've never actually started the whole writing journey with the thought of I want to get rich or I want to be a popular author of any of this. I've never started this journey, and I'm still not. I'm still very realistic about the whole
Mm,
journey. Um, I mean, I have my 9 to 5 job. It's not that, money doesn't come or I have to focus on this or this is my,
right.
life or death. No. So I wrote for myself because I wanted to write a story. I wanted to try it. That was basically the first thing I wanted to try. But I've never had that, like it has to be on the first book or whatever comes after this, that I want to be like a stardom author of any sort
Right.
of stuff. No.
Absolutely. And I think it's also like, a really, mentality,
Yes.
decision in the sense that, do you want to be an author who writes books as like a hobby, or do you want to be an
Yes.
author who's like a commercial fiction writer? Because that is a mentality where, okay, I have a deadline. I got to submit this book. I got to publish it on this
Yeah.
time. And that is a decision. Not to say it's, difficult decision. It is a difficult decision, but you have to be realistic as a commercial fiction writer. Because if you
Yes.
do go down that path, you have to understand and do a lot of research into the market trends. And currently now, the one genre that is dominating is romance fantasy. That is the
Yes.
dominant genre that is, taking the publishing world by storm. And, some authors I have talked with to say, we don't want to write in romance fantasy, but that's the one that's dominating. And some people have said that, oh, your book is romance fantasy. It's like, well, not necessarily. I mean, yes, there's romance in it, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't be classified as a romance fantasy or sorrowful. And it just, it takes a lot of trial and error and real hard look at what kind of author you want to be. And as I said before, there's no right or wrong decision or paths. But what I will say, going back to it, is do not go into this business mindset believing that it's a get rich quick scheme. It is
Never.
not. It
No,
is
it's not.
absolutely not. And
No. No.
um, I guess also another question to you, Suman, what would sort of be your, well, let me rephrase it like this. Looking back at the success you have right now, do you feel if you've gone down a different path, your passion for writing would be very different? Let's say you want to go traditionally published, and it
Mhm.
does get picked up by a publishing house either in the States or one in Europe. Would you feel the same passion you have right now?
No, no, I know myself, no, because I've heard a lot of stories where if you go traditional, you have to query and rejection,
Hmm.
and even if you get an agent or a publish house that wants to publish your book, you have to edit a lot of things, a lot of scenes that will be cut and stuff like that. I don't think I would be motivated by that. I write for fun. It is basically a hobby of mine. I started
Mm.
writing as this is just going to be a fun thing, and I would never be as motivated or passionate about writing if I would do it the other way around. So no, no, I don't. No,
All right,
that's why
that's a
I also
fair.
actually chose for indie publish, because that's the only path where I can create my own style. I can write whatever I want to write, and no one is going there to tell me that I have to cut this scene out or that or some stuff like that. I mean, traditional published book are awesome, but as an indie author, for me, my opinion is that you write everything you want to have in your book, and nobody's going to stop you from putting it in your book.
Absolutely, 100%. And going back to indie authors, so Suman, when you began this journey and doing research, I'm curious, did you possibly do research and look into other indie authors on social media? Because the indie author community on Instagram is enormous, especially on TikTok as well. So I'm
Yes.
wondering if you would like to give a personal shout out to any indie authors or just people in general who have really helped you understand the industry and business a little bit better?
There are a lot of which I also follow and see that I was like, yeah, that's really good, and I was really inspired by them also, the way they took their journey and the way they market books, their stuff. So I have a lot of in mind, but I'm also blank on it. For example, I love Brittany Gosson with the Dreamwalker. She's also an indie author. I love Katrina Mora, also an indie author. Uh, there are a lot of sci-fi authors that I know. Erica, also on Instagram. There's a whole sci-fi group I'm in, and all of them are indie authors, and I love them. I'm not good with names, but the people they know who I'm talking about if they see this. So yeah, a lot of it actually. It's very inspiring journey, and it's also very, very difficult for them to make a place in the world with their books. So I can see the struggle they're going through, and I can see my own struggles. So sometimes, yeah, it's very difficult for us.
Excellent. And as a final send off question to capstone this amazing author interview, you've probably already answered this before, but I wonder if you can give a different answer to this question, which is this: with everything you've learned thus far, and counting down the days to your book's eventual live moment on Amazon, what is your word of wisdom to fellow indie authors who want to go ahead down this road and publish a story that they've had for a very long time?
Well, it's probably very cliche, but my only wisdom words in this would be like, keep going, don't stop. Even though you have a writer's block, even though whatever happens, take a break, but after that, go on and prepare your story first before you start writing it. That's the only thing that I actually did. I've been thinking about this story for years now, and I've been preparing it so well in my head that the moment I started writing, everything came out. So that's the thing that I would want to share with fellow writers, that keep going, prepare your story, and make sure that it's probably not a deadline someone gives you, but make a deadline for yourself. I mean, for me, I started writing a year ago, 7 August to be exact, and I had a deadline, 7 August the next year, I want to be done. The story has to be written, and that was my deadline. Make it for yourself if it works. It worked for me. So keep going, yeah, and enjoy it. Definitely enjoy it.
Absolutely 100%. And with that, viewers and listeners, we have reached the end of this amazing author interview. I want to give a huge thank you to Suman for coming on the show. And before we end, viewers and listeners, we have some special announcements to make. So, Suman, where can people find you on social media as well as pre-order your book? And I'm wondering if you have a copy of your book to share with the viewer so that they can find it a lot easier.
Yes, this is my book. So it's
Awesome.
The Galaxy Eyes, and it's on Amazon. The Kindle version is on Amazon, and from December 12th, so from six days from now, it will be live. It will be released for the paperback version. And you can find me on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm also on Facebook, basically with my name, Suman Soechit. It's my official name, and that's where you can find me, how you can find me.
Excellent. I will list all those down below in the description of this video. And since it is the holiday season, I also have a little announcement to make. 1 second. So, since it is the holiday season, I have decided to do something special. So, many of you have seen my third book, The Gathering, and
Wow.
I have decided to do a holiday sale for all three of my books, so you can all see it, viewers and listeners. So, The Gathering, Amnesty of Persia, and Michael, Last Angel of Earth will be on sale at 50% off ebooks version, I might add, and there'll be a special code to get 50% off, which I will link down below in the description of this video. So if you want to get 50% off your ebook copies of The Gathering, or I should say Michael, wrong book, Michael, The Gathering, and Amanus, Son of Persia, make sure to get that code and add it to your checkout. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to all of my subscribers, to all of my fans. We have now reached 10K views on this channel. That is incredible, viewers. Thank you so very much for your constant love and support and subscribing to this channel. I'm glad you're enjoying the content that I am producing. And I have so many great plans for 2025, but you just have to wait and see. And again, a huge thank you to Suman for coming on the show. We wish her the very best on her journey with the Galaxy Eyes. And who knows, if things work out, possibly, maybe I may be able to see Suman in person, or she can probably see me in person at an author event. We'll just have to wait and see for what the future holds. But until then, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill asking you to like, comment, and subscribe down below. And be on the lookout for the next set of interviews coming next week. And until then, this is the Wandering Scribe signing out, wishing you a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world.